Hello bookworms! Today I'm going to be sharing my January book haul with you. So just to start off, I am going to be briefly touching upon my 2021 goals at the beginning of every single book haul video that I do this year because I really want to hold myself accountable to that goal. And if I know that I'm going to have to talk about it at the beginning of the month, I think I'll also do a better job of sticking to it. So I will say that January was a bit of an anomaly, and you'll see why in a little bit, but I feel as though I succeeded in my goal. It's a little bit murky. It can be argued either way because of one book, and I'll explain it when I get to that book. But my goal is to purchase less books than I read during the month because I have the intention of lowering my physical TBR. So in January, I read a total of 11 books and I purchased 10 books. I also received 2 finished copies from publishers that I'm interested in reading. And the unforeseen anomaly is that Goodreads reached out to me and they ended up sending me 4 arcs of books that are on my most anticipated list for the year. And I just could not say no to them because I pretty much want to throw out my February TBR and read these books right away. That's how excited I am for them. So while I acquired more books than I read, I didn't purchase more books than I read. But I'm gonna go ahead and start with the books that I bought myself this month. The first book that I got is a new release, and that is You Have a Match by Emma Lord. This is her sophomore novel. I've been so highly anticipating it. I'm actually going to start reading it as soon as I finish filming today. This is gonna be the next physical book that I pick up. I had wanted to read it in January, but I just didn't get around to it. I have talked about this book extensively in both my TBR video and in my most anticipated releases video, so I won't go through the whole synopsis again with you, but I'll just briefly say that it is a book about a girl who takes a DNA test, finds out that she has a secret sister, meets that secret sister at summer camp, and it sounds like it's going to be excellent. I also got very lucky with this finished copy because I pre-ordered it, and if you had been one of the people that pre-ordered, depending on I guess where you got it from, got one that has a removable sticker so I can take this off, but in future printings, the sticker is actually printed on the dust jacket, so I felt so grateful that I'll be able to take that sticker off. The next book that I purchased is The Bone Season by Samantha Shannon. This is an old book, but the 4th book, The Mask Falling, is either coming out very soon or it just came out this past week. I'm not 100% sure. It wasn't totally on my radar since I haven't actually read the first book yet. My 2 best friends, Alexa and Rachel, both have been rereading all of the books in the Bone Season series in the lead up to the 4th book, The Mask Falling. Both of them said that it really held up for them, and I do believe this is actually an adult fantasy novel, though we do have a young heroine. It follows a girl named Paige who is a clairvoyant, and she's working in the criminal underworld of Scion, London. So basically, by being a clairvoyant, she's able to walk in people's dreams, which is something that is illegal, so just her existence is an illegality. Paige ends up getting attacked, kidnapped, and drugged and taken away to a city called Oxford, which is like a secret city that has been hidden for over 200 years. And that city is governed by a race of people who want to control all clairvoyants, so that's why they brought Paige there. Paige is assigned to someone named Warden, who is like a very powerful person in this race of people. She needs to get close to him in order to try to escape. I would not be surprised if there's some kind of romance that forms between the two of them because that's just what seems to happen in fantasy books. I'm really excited because this book has been on my radar for a really long time, but I knew how long it was taking between books, so I never really felt the urgency to pick it up. But now with both of my best friends saying that it really holds up and that it's a series worth owning in hardcover, I am quite excited to have got my hands on the first book. I took their advice. I got it. I'm really hoping that I'm going to love it as much as they do, and it's definitely one that I'm going to be picking up soon. Then I purchased If I Had Your Face by Frances Cha. This one I read in the month of January too, pretty much as soon as it came in the mail. It ended up being the next book that I picked up because I've just been dying to read it. So I did talk about it in my wrap-up video that I just posted if you want to hear my full thoughts on it, but I did really enjoy it. It's a slice of life novel following 4 characters in South Korea, and it examines the unreasonably high beauty standards in South Korea, and it's just the life of these 4 women and it's a very character-driven novel, which I love. So this one worked very well for me, and I'm really excited to add it to my collection. Then I got Miyazaki World, A Life in Art by Susan Napier, and this is actually on my February TBR. It is a nonfiction book about Hayao Miyazaki, who is the head of Studio Ghibli and has spearheaded so many of the films that I just adore. And it examines his life and his art and the impact that it's had on Japan and just in film worldwide. I'm really looking forward to reading this one. I imagine I'm going to be picking this one up pretty soon. Then I got The Midnight Library by Matt Haig. This one is also in my February TBR, and I did talk about it in that video, but it follows a girl named Nora Seed who is between life and death and finds herself in the Midnight Library, where she's able to examine all of the choices that she didn't make and potentially correct and change things within her life. And I just think it's going to be a really interesting story. I've been very much looking forward to reading it, and that's why it's on my February TBR. Then I got The Answer Is by Alex Trebek. This was actually my favorite book that I read in January, just because I really love Alex Trebek. I love Jeopardy. I have such fond memories of the show, of watching the show with my family, and it was really interesting to learn more about Alex's life from his childhood all the way to present day, like when the book was published, and it even touches upon life during COVID and everything, which is something that I haven't actually read in a book yet. I listened to the audiobook, which was delightful because it was partially read by Alex himself, and I'm sure you know that Alex has passed away, so it was just really comforting to be able to hear his voice again. The other portion of the book was narrated by Ken Jennings, who was a contestant on Jeopardy that was there for about 4.5 months, which is the longest stint that any player has ever had. And Ken is actually now guest hosting Jeopardy as they are looking for Alex's replacement. I think he's actually doing a great job, and I do hope that he ends up being the host, but we'll see what happens there. Absolutely love this book. And as I said, I listened to it on audio, so when it came in the mail, I was just kind of flipping through, and I noticed that there are so many photographs in here from Alex's life, and I'm so excited to sit down and look at all of those photographs just to have even more Alex in my life. I'm really glad to add this one to my personal library. Then I got Before the Coffee Gets Cold by Toshikazu Kawaguchi, and the premise of this book just sounded so interesting to me. It is a Japanese novel, follows I believe 4 main protagonists. It takes place in a cafe that has very specific time travel rules. So if you go to this cafe, you can order a cup of coffee and then you are able to time travel. But one of the stipulations is that you have to be finished before the time that your coffee gets cold. And this book, in addition to The Midnight Library, also explores the idea of what you would change if you were able to go back in time. So I clearly have a theme going there, but I'm really excited to read this one. Then I picked up Sweet Bean Paste by Durian Sukagawa. This is another one that sounds really heartwarming, and it also involves food. We are following a protagonist named Sentaro who has dreams of becoming a writer, but he kind of lets that slip to the wayside, and he works in a Japanese bakery, and he makes dorayaki, which is basically like a pancake that is filled with sweet bean paste. Really good if you haven't ever had it. But everything changes when an elderly woman named Toku comes to his shop. She makes the best sweet bean paste ever, and she begins to teach him his craft. She has very disfigured hands and a troubled past, and the pair of them end up forming a friendship with one another, but due to social pressures, some of the secrets of her past come to light, and it's supposedly going to change everything. It sounds really good, really thought-provoking. This is another novel that is a Japanese novel that was translated into English, and I was initially drawn to it by the cover because I really love cherry blossoms, and I've been looking at this one in the bookstore for quite a while, so I decided to finally take the plunge this month. Then, switching gears a little bit, not a novel, I ended up picking up The Star Wars Archives. This is the definitive edition. It's the 40th anniversary edition, and it explores the making of Star Wars 4 through 6, A New Hope through Return of the Jedi. I've paged through it a little bit, and it is just chock full of behind the scenes photos and interviews, and I'm so excited to read it. As you guys know, I love Star Wars, so I can't wait to read this one. Also, for everyone who asked in my bookshelf tour, no, I definitely did not get rid of my Star Wars books. I just have them on a different shelf. They're actually in my bedroom with my manga and graphic novels, so that's why you didn't see them on my main shelves, but no, I still have my Star Wars books. I love Star Wars. And look at the end papers. And then the last book that I purchased is The X-Talk by Rachel Lynn Solomon. I talked about this one in my 2021 most anticipated releases video, and I honestly completely forgot that I pre-ordered it, and I was really excited when it showed up in the mail, and I was like, oh yeah, I forgot that was coming out this week. So I definitely want to try to tack this one on to my February TBR, but it's a romance novel, and it's an enemies to lovers romance following two talk show hosts at a public radio station who despise one another, but they start a program called the X-Talk where exes give relationship advice, and then the two of them obviously end up falling in love, and it just sounds like it's going to be super cute. So those are the 10 books that I purchased for myself this month, and I read 11 books, so I purchased less than I read. But here's where things get murky, and I'm moving into the category of books that publishers sent to me that I'm interested in reading. This is the book that makes things a little bit murky. So I have The Wife Upstairs by Rachel Hawkins. Technically, I pre-ordered this book, but then the publisher sent me a finished copy. So with 2 copies, I ended up gifting the copy that I purchased to my mom, and my mom read it and enjoyed it, and I am now passing along that copy to Alexa from Alexa Loves Books so that she can read it. So I'm counting this as a gifted book from the publisher, even though I technically had purchased a copy too. And even if that's the case, I read 11 books and purchased 11 books, and I've already read this one, but I just wanted to throw that out there. That's why I'm like, it's a weird month to say whether I made my goal or not. This is a modern day thriller novel that is inspired by Gothic novels like Jane Eyre and Rebecca. It's definitely more closely associated with Jane Eyre because the main character's name is Jane and the love interest is Edward Rochester. I read this one really quickly. It was very intriguing and very quick paced and really fun. It wasn't my favorite thriller that I ever read, but I did enjoy it nonetheless. Then Wednesday Books was so kind as to send me a finished copy of Fable by Adrienne Young. I've been really dying to read this book. I actually talked about its sequel, Namesake, in my 2021 anticipated releases video. I really like that Adrienne wrote these novels so close together and that they were released so close together so that you don't have to wait an entire year before you get the conclusion to the story. So the first one was published in September and the second one is coming out either end of February or sometime in March. It's a young adult fantasy story. It's set like on the ocean and it has pirates and traders, and our main character Fable gets marooned on an island by her father after her mother passes away, and she has to survive on this island and try to find her father and reclaim her place in the world. I've heard excellent things about it and I'm very excited to read this one. Then moving on to the 4 arcs that Goodreads sent me, which I am so excited for. I still can't believe that this happened. Like, I am really excited about these books. So first and foremost, One Last Stop by Casey McQuiston. For anyone who's watched my channel for a while, you know how much I loved Red, White, and Royal Blue. That was one of my favorite books that I read in 2019, like absolute favorites. It's still an all-time favorite for me and I still think about it, and it was just so well written. So I've been like so highly anticipating her follow-up, which is One Last Stop, which comes out in May. The premise of this one is really interesting. It follows a cynical 23-year-old named August, and she develops a crush on a girl that she sees on the subway. That girl's name is Jane, and she ends up finding out that Jane is actually displaced in time. Jane is actually from the 1970s. So basically the impossible starts becoming possible, and August needs to figure out how to save Jane from being completely lost in time. And it's supposed to be a very cute female-female romance, and I'm really excited to read it. Then my other favorite book in 2019 was Daisy Jones and the Six by Taylor Jenkins Reid. And Goodreads just sent me a copy of Malibu Rising by Taylor Jenkins Reid, and I'm so excited for this one. This one takes place in Malibu in 1983, and I believe the entire novel takes place over the course of 24 hours. We're following 4 siblings who are throwing like this huge party in order to celebrate the end of the summer. The siblings are all very famous, and the entire world is like intrigued by them. Their father is a famous rock star. There is a little bit of information about each of the siblings in the synopsis, but what really caught my attention is it says that by midnight the party will be out of control, and by the morning the mansion that they live in will have gone up in flames. And it just sounds super fascinating to me. Goodreads also sent me The Other Black Woman by Zakiya Dalila Harris. This book is described as Get Out meets The Devil Wears Prada. So it's a thriller that follows 2 black women who meet each other at a New York publishing agency that they both work for. This is described as Get Out meets The Devil Wears Prada, and it is a debut novel. It takes place in New York City. It involves the publishing industry, so both of those things already very much have my attention. It follows 2 black women who work for the publisher. One of them has worked there for a little while, and she's always been the only black woman, and then a new woman comes. She's really excited when Hazel starts working there, and the 2 of them end up becoming kind of close, but then there's some kind of series of events that happens that makes Hazel the office darling, and Nella is kind of just left in the dust. And then Nella starts getting these very threatening notes on her desk telling her to leave Wagner, which is the publisher that they work for. And she's not sure if these notes are coming from Hazel, but Nella starts to spiral and obsess about what is going on. And it's described as a whip-smart and dynamic thriller. Definitely looking forward to reading this one. And then the final arc that Goodreads sent me is A Vow So Bold and Deadly by Bridget Kemmerer. This is the 3rd and final book in the Cursebreaker series. I really enjoyed the first book, and I still have to read the second book, but I'm very excited that I can now binge books 2 and 3 pretty close together. It's a Beauty and the Beast inspired fantasy world, and in the first book we were following Harper, who got transported to this magical kingdom from Washington, D.C., and she had to try to help break this curse that was plaguing the people. And then in the second book we got to follow one of my favorite characters from the first book, and another character, and then this final book should wrap up the stories for all 4 of those characters. I haven't read the synopsis because I don't want to be spoiled on anything, but I am very excited to get to this one. So those are all of the books that I purchased in January. I really like the new method of buying books that I've been sticking to. I think it's made me really thoughtful about what I'm investing my money in, and I'm definitely reading books sooner. The books that I'm buying aren't really sitting on my TBR for a while. I tend to pick things up pretty quickly because I'm really interested in everything that I'm buying, and I feel like I'm also doing a lot more research before buying books. Not research in the sense of looking at reviews, but in the sense of reading the plot before I purchase anything, because I want to just make sure that I really want to read it. And it's also been fun because every time that I finish a book, I'll be like, what is it that I want to buy next? And I have to determine what it is I really want to read. And then I'll usually text my friends Alexa, Rachel, and DJ and say okay, I can buy a new book. Which book should I get out of these 2 to 3 books? And then they'll give me their opinions, and then I'll go from there. And it's been fun. Let me know if you read anything that I mentioned. Let me know if you're looking forward to any of the new releases or arcs that I mentioned, and I'm sure that you will hear me wrap up some of these books very soon, and some of them you actually already did hear me wrap up in my January wrap-up video. But that's all that I have for this video, and I will see you guys soon in a new one. Bye!